After a red-hot start to the season, the Philadelphia Phillies have cooled off a bit with some familiar issues popping to the forefront. This includes some uncertainty and lack of production from Alec Bohm, some bullpen struggles, and the outfield not shaping up as desired. Well, Rob Thomson has jumped into action, already making some changes with the lineup and with the roster that I think is important to get into today. Ultimately, the spirits are not super high as we're coming off back-to-back pretty frustrating losses from this Phillies team. Obviously, there was the rain delay that it was plenty of time off and could not find a way to gut it out, and then the team looking absolutely lifeless in a 2-0 loss to the Cardinals to start the next series. So obviously not the easiest circumstances to deal with as a player, but do want to talk a little bit about the ins and outs of each of those games. Before I do so, do want to remind you guys, as always, to make sure you are hitting that subscribe button. That at this point in time, 37.4% of you guys watching these videos, that's all that have subscribed to us here on Phillies Digest just yet. So we are in the full swing of the season. Do want to grow this Phillies Digest family as large as possible, so it helps us out. Appreciate you guys more than you do know there. Now, to dive into the topic of today, first, I want to start off a little bit with the box score last night, that it was a 2-0 loss at the hands of the Cardinals here. I do think it is fair to chalk this one up. I know maybe this is making excuses a little bit too much for the guys, but over the grand scheme of 162 games, you're just not going to be at your best on an every night basis. And it was clear to me watching the lack of energy, the lack of, these looked like guys who did not wrap up their game until 1 a.m. the night before and had to fly immediately, out to the Midwest there. That's what it looked like, and that is what happened here. Now, a couple things that I do think are notable. I want to start with the lineup that was put out in display for this matchup. It was Bryson Stott leading off for roughly the 55th time in his career, Trey Turner at batting second and at shortstop, Bryce Harper at third, Kyle Schwarber at fourth, Nick Castellanos at fifth, Max Kepler at sixth, Alec Bohm all the way down in the seventh hole, which is the lowest in the order he has hit since 2023. Brandon Marsh and then Rafael Marchand closing things down there. And for what it's worth, as I record this before they start their afternoon Saturday game, a pretty similar lineup. JT Realmuto coming back in, a couple other little changes here, but they are keeping this core. Stott staying at the leadoff. And my favorite part, what I think is most important to note here, I love that they are doubling up Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber. And this does seem to be the biggest driving motivation for why Rob Thomson is doing this. In fact, he was asked about it following the game, and he stated that Rob Thomson on batting Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber back-to-back in the 3 and 4 starts, quote, just trying to protect Harp as best as we can. Through 12 games, the hitter behind Harper, in that order, Bohm 7 times, Realmuto and Castellanos twice, Kepler once, is 6 for 50. That is not good enough, and this has been a problem that we've seen quite a bit throughout the Bryce Harper tenure. Frankly, there were stretches in playoff runs that we saw Nick Castellanos not looking like a guy who drove enough fear into the opposing pitching staff's hearts that they were willing to just throw at him, pitch right by him, and that did not allow Bryce Harper to see actual pitches over the plate here. For this Phillies team to function as desired, Bryce Harper has to be the MVP caliber talent that he is capable of being, and for him to do that, he has to have opportunities to hit the ball and drive in runs for this Phillies team. That has not happened through the early parts of the season. Now, I've never been a fan of the Bohm in the fourth hole mindset. Even at his best, Bohm is far from a power hitter here, and I don't really theoretically or philosophically agree with this, reset the lineup, that you do have a contact hitter behind that. Just get your two best hitters hitting back-to-back, and that is what Rob Thomson is doing with Bryce Harper and with Kyle Schwarber. And by the way, with Kyle Schwarber, I think the biggest mistake that the Phillies did make with Kyle Schwarber was not giving this man an extension coming into this season, because he is going to earn himself a pretty penny and get a ridiculous dollar figure if he does hit the open market. I do hope that is not the case, that they can agree to something. I did read up a little bit, Ken Rosenthal reporting that he had declined some initial offers. My feeling is probably that the Phillies tried to get a little hometown discount, lowball him a little bit, and then Kyle said, all right, well, let me speak with my production, and boy, is he doing that with 6 home runs already this year. Now, when evaluating the issue with this Phillies team, which, by the way, not in panic mode yet, we are still way too early on in the season, and I think these are understandable little lulls that they're currently facing here. But when looking at the actual problem with what we've seen, I do think timely hitting is number one, even above the bullpen, even above the outfield, even above Alec Bohm's struggles. But when you look at it so far this season, that the Phillies with runners in scoring position, they've had 108 at-bats, just 24 hits during that time. 5 doubles, 5 home runs, 40 RBIs, 27 walks, and 24 strikeouts. That comes down to hitting splits of 226, 388, and 453. And to be perfectly honest, those are better numbers than I would have guessed. If you had asked me to predict that, it feels like pretty much never that they're coming up with those timely hits. Now, it's a little bit unfair to grade on this scale because of the stance of there is an inherent randomness to baseball that we just kind of got to accept to a point. That you could have the same exact plate approach and the same exact results, and it's just different whether or not there is a guy on base. That is how the sport works. It's how we got to deal with. But I do think it has been kind of notable to start this season, not coming through when the moment matters most. Even in a game like last night, when you have bases loaded, Nick Castellanos at the plate, get me something. The strikeouts have been way too prevalent within this team, and I do wonder if Rob Thomson is really hovering over this button. The big guy to keep an eye on, and we all know this to be the case, it is the status of Alec Bohm, of how much trust is there? Does this guy continue getting opportunities? And how much are the Phillies really trying to break him to an extent here? It does feel like there's a little bit of like, we knew Alec Bohm could kind of do whatever Alec Bohm wants to do for quite a amount of time. And I mean that with like the way he carried himself, the expression, the pouting, all these kind of things on the field. It now feels like there's a magnifying glass to where anytime there's anything, everyone freaks out about it. And I do wonder if the next move to make that happen or to send a message will be to press the Cody Clemens button for Rob Thomson. And shout out to Phillies Tailgate, who is all over things, tweets out, Cody Clemens hasn't been appeared in a game since March 30th. With the offense struggling, why not give him a shot? I've also seen some takes or some theories about how, Clemens has played some third base before or is capable of doing that. I would like to see Cody a little bit. I don't think benching Alec Bohm for him is necessarily the message there. And the other part that I think we should keep in mind as we have these kind of bigger picture conversations, all other teams are keeping note of this as well. That if you're just outright benching Alec Bohm, that certainly doesn't help him from a trade value perspective, or teams looking at it saying, oh, we need that guy. He's clearly helping this team in a major way. So I think for the time being, you let Alec Bohm continuing to fight through whatever kind of funk that he's in here, and I do think there will be better days ahead. Is there a real chance where this guy slips into a lost season? I'm not saying it's zero, but it's far too early for that to be the case. You're going to have your hot streaks and you're going to have your cold streaks throughout an MLB season, and I just kind of think Alec Bohm is in one of those funks, one of those cold streaks right now. There's been a lot of opportunities where he's hit the ball on its head, hit the ball well, hit it hard, and it's just been right at a fielder there. That happens in baseball, man, and it's maddening when you are at the plate, when you're the guy going through it, but I think it's far more been about that than anything specific with Bohm. Now, there's plate appearance stuff that you can critique. We watched Castellanos strike out 5 times in the same game. There's stuff to be mad about, but I don't think we should be in panic mode completely there. But I think the biggest takeaway is Rob Thomson is being more proactive than we've seen from him before. I think one of the frustrations or the biggest complaints about Rob is there have been stretches where I don't want to say he's been asleep at the wheel, but his leash with players has been far longer than we expected to be the case, or really should be the case there, that we've seen Alec Bohm go through entire playoff stretches. Nick Castellanos continue to be landlocked at his spot in the order. That is not the case this year. That is not the standard that Rob Thomson is setting. He is saying, I'm going to be responsive based on how players are playing, what this team needs, and it's clear he has a little bit more willingness or desire to experiment and try and juice more out of this specific Phillies roster. So I loved what I've seen from Rob. We're still in the very early parts of the season. I believe we're about 8% through the baseball season as a whole yet, so don't panic too much just yet. They will be back in action against the Cardinals today. Probably going to pop on later and rip a video as well if there's anything notable that does pop on. I'm in the middle of my work shift right now, so I had a quick hour I wanted to jet in and make sure I got something out here, but I'm loving what I've seen from Rob Thomson. So shout out to him for being as proactive in the way that he is with this team. I do hope that continues through the season. We will see what decisions are made from here, but I love that he is hitting with the Harper, Schwarber, third and fourth there, and I do think for the larger conversation, that is how this roster should ultimately be locked up. That is how this lineup should be decided, is that when all things are settled, we can have the leadoff conversation. Maybe there's Trey Turner up there, whatever. We'll get into more of that, but I do love that Rob Thomson is experimenting, trying new things, and I think the results will eventually speak for themselves. But let me know if you guys agree or disagree on that overall topic there. As always, do want to remind you guys to make sure you are hitting that subscribe button. Once again, just 62.6% of you guys watching these videos have not subscribed to us here at Phillies Digest just yet, so let's keep this Digest family growing. Let's get through this season together. Appreciate you guys tuning in. I'll be back talking with you next time. Peace.